YouTube. So I hope you're watching these in order. I'm probably like 2 or 3 videos behind, which is over 2 weeks worth behind at uploading these. I don't know, I just haven't. The only place I ever have enough bandwidth to upload them is at home, and hang on, traffic report.
There's a pedestrian accident there. A water main break is causing some restrictions along 32nd Street northbound between Thomas and Earl, so avoid that. And till 3 o'clock this afternoon, they're doing some work I-10 westbound at the 32nd Street on-ramp. They've got that on-ramp closed up till 3 today. You can use 40th Street instead. This report sponsored by Quick Trip. It's a summer...
that was all important stuff to know. Anyway, so yeah, I'm a couple weeks behind on uploading this stuff. And it's hard to remember what I've said on these different vlogs, but I know one thing that's been ooh, there's a guy with records. Wow. It's something I don't see every day. There's some dude walking down the street holding some vinyl records. Which reminds me, I got some eBay orders. I need to ship them. A little bit behind on it. Anyway, where was I? So yeah, there's been a few common themes in these different videos, and one of which has been ones where I'm driving late at night because I'm just restless, and I said many times I'm very frustrated that the background checks performed by Uber and Lyft prevent me from being a driver for Uber or Lyft, and how it seems to have just pretty much ended the taxi business. But I figured at this, well, I don't know if it's as much figuring as just sheer desperation of I don't have enough money to pay my rent this month, and I'm not getting enough karaoke gigs to make it happen. So I better try something that I don't want to do above and beyond that to get some more cash flow happening. And because nobody's making a GoFundMe for me. Anyway, even though I don't know if I was as much let go as I just left on rather bad terms, but at any rate, it's been 13, I'm going to estimate maybe 13 years since I drove for VIP Taxi. And there were certainly a handful of not good incidents that happened there. And when I left, the main manager, in terms of drivers, fleet manager, whatever, was a man named Carl, who always seemed to kind of have an issue with me. And I never, you know, I don't know, I remember back in the day overanalyzing that, and that's a long time ago, so I don't recall exactly what my conclusions were on that, other than I always kind of felt a little uncomfortable around him, and he always seemed like he just was just never comfortable with me. And then of course and granted, some rather ridiculous things happened, and I may vlog about that later, but I mean things that involved somebody having to, in a quick hurry, come and get a Phoenix-based taxi from the police in the middle of downtown Tucson as I was getting arrested. Yeah, and so not good things by any means. I mean, sometimes shit happens. There was, you know, nothing that was particularly reflected on me as a bad cab driver. It was just, you know, bad situations, but certainly not things that were good for the cab company. So there's something different. Instead of a guy sitting here with a sign begging for cash, there's a guy busking on this corner. God, I would actually give this dude some cash for this if I had any, and I have zero cash at all. I mean, I don't even have change right now. God, I wish I had a bottle of water to give him. I'm going to open the window and see if I can hear it. Full-size Casio, looks like. apartment the wrong direction. I should have went down 46th Street. I'd already be on the freeway by now. I can kind of hear that he's got music on, but I can't really make out what he's playing over the sound of the freeway, which is a bummer. Guy needs like a little battery powered guitar amp he can plug that thing into. Well, I question how many people are rolling their windows down to hear him on this hot of a day. I heard a couple chords when I passed. That was fun. Oh, well. Bless him for being something better than just a beggar at a freeway ramp. Oh gosh, where was I? Oh, so prior to Carl being at the cab company, the main manager was a guy named Fred, a Middle Eastern guy. I forget his real name. It was hard to pronounce. Everybody called him Fred. And I heard he passed away several years ago. And I always got along really great with Fred. Fred was a very abrasive person. A lot of people didn't like him or just thought he was a mean guy, but Fred was just always very direct. Like, you always knew where you stood with Fred. Fred was, when I like that. That's the sort of thing I like. I mean, oh, he's rude, he's this, he's that, he's, he'd listen to you, but he'd talk over you, but he'd also listen when I talk over him, and it seemed like Fred and I usually always communicated really well. And even a couple of times when some shit hit the fan, my primary thing when I drove for a VIP taxi the last time was doing unaccompanied minors for CPS. And did a lot of those runs, particularly, long, big dollar ones. And it wasn't even them trying to give me preferential treatment and feed me long, big dollar runs. They gave me most of the stuff out in Pinal County. And this is at a time when drivers were starting to use GPS devices, and those GPS devices were useless in the quickly developing Pinal County areas. South Empire Road, east of I-10. Drivers that were reliant on their GPS to get them to addresses couldn't find shit down there. I rarely roll with anything more than a street guide, which I'm bringing the last one I bought with me today. I've memorized the 100 blocks of most streets and where they're at, like passing McKinley, and that's 800 North, and I know that. Somebody says I'm going to an address on McKinley, I know that it's a couple blocks south of Roosevelt at 800 North, and then I just have to look at the address how far east or west of Central it is, and I know where that place is. I don't need GPS to guide me there. And so that's why I got most of those runs. I was just a very competent driver with a good sense of direction that could find anything without having to call and get directions or and a lot of the drivers, when they would call in, they'd be like, oh, my GPS doesn't have this, I can't find this doesn't exist, and then a lot of them were the same addresses repeatedly. So, I mean, I knew where they were. So, did that quite a lot, and I did have an incident where I had dropped off a child, young teenager, I'm thinking probably 13, 14, at a CPS facility, and his parents were in the waiting room, which I guess I noticed people in the waiting room. That wasn't what I was focusing on. One thing, I tend to be hyper-focused on whatever I'm focused on, and sometimes I do miss other things because I'm hyper-focused on whatever it is I'm focusing on, which at that moment was basically making sure that the child was with me and that I got the signature of a CPS staff person. I went to the desk, which in this particular office was behind a window. And staffer at the desk signed it and just asked me to have him sit in the waiting room so that somebody would be out there for him and sign him. I said, okay, am I good? She said, yeah. So I went on my way. Did everything I was supposed to, by the books, always did. And apparently CPS wasn't supervising him very well once I dropped him off in their care. And the parents abducted the kid. And I got called in. Deactivated and called in, and Fred was just going off, like just yelling and yelling, like at his worst. And it was like, Fred, calm down. Fred, it's like, what? I said, we're good. He said, what? I said, there were cameras in there, plenty of cameras in there, and I've got the signature right here on my voucher sheet with the exact time that I dropped him off, which will line up with the GPS, showing where I was. And he just stopped. He's like, and actually apologized to me for being so upset. He's just like, thank you. He's like changed his tune completely. He says, thank you. That's what we needed. And it did. It turned everything around. I guess CPS was making a big deal with the cab company, and I did what I needed to do. Anyway, I'm almost there. On the road training ride along starts today. I find it funny they're treating me as a completely new driver, but I'm relieved by it because apparently Carl doesn't remember any of the bad incidents involving me, and I'd like it to stay that way. At some point he's got to remember. Either there he does remember, and he's just so desperate to get new drivers, he's pretending he doesn't. But anyway, I'm here, and Carl is still one of the head guys. So, although for the last 2 days I've spent a lot of time with him, and we're getting along fabulously. So hopefully that maintains. But kind of speaking of autistic masking, I'm pretty much trying to put on a facade of a guy who's very experienced in taxi driving, but never left here with any bad incidents. So here goes nothing.